I understand how Scorn went. Do you remember how amazing that game looked, how hyped up it was? And then it came out and it was just complete mid-heaven.
Scorn.
The one sad thing is about Scorn that I've noticed is like there are lore videos that are getting hundreds of thousands of views at the minute because people played Scorn and there was so little substance that they're just craving for like anything else.
Whoa, hey fellas, that's me's talking about there. Still waiting for that apology, Pyrocynical, for stealing all my jokes. Take your time, buddy, but be quick about it. So Transhumanist Gamer made a video recently about some of his afterthoughts on Scorn, and he opened up a thing at the start which is how I feel as well, where he was discussing that there isn't really much to talk about. Like, you know, people expected me to be talking about loads because the game's out there and talk about all these theories, but the problem is that you kind of can't. There's not actually that there's not that much there. Like, playing over Scorn, it's far too vague, and looking over like everything to do with it, I don't feel like there's anything more that I can really say about it or its lore that hasn't already been said in my video about, you know, its artwork, my video about the art book. And there are many things that I've been wanting to talk about, but there's not really much there in order to create a full and proper video on the subject. And even though I desperately want to talk to you about this game, I want to tell you as much as I can about what it's about, it's just that there isn't actually very much there. I said, beyond the art book, they're just well, what is there really? They are way too mysterious in the game, and the game itself is far too vague to really pull up any, like, actual pieces of story. Majority of it really is just allegory for things, right? An allegory in of itself does not work, right? As J.R. Tolkien said, I cordially dislike allegory in all its manifestations and always have done so since I grew old and wary enough to detect its presence. Like, things can have an alternate meaning. They can be a reflection of something real, but there has to be an actual tangible story behind it, which Scorn clearly has the pieces for it there, but it just doesn't want to show them, right? Which is why I think people have been asking for a Scorn 2, or in my case, where I've been asking for a Scorn Director's Cut. The one thing that I have really been enjoying is reading through my comment sections and looking at the sort of things that people have been saying, the way they've been interpreting this game. And on the majority of my videos, I'm able to read all of the comments, though given that one where it just fucking blew up, for obvious reasons, I wasn't able to read all of these, and so there are probably many gems in there that I've missed. And before we get into the actual theories that I want to showcase here, I'm going to settle a few theories that have come up within the community. The first one is, of course, about the parasite. Oh! Ah! Get up! Get up! Off! Yeah, off! This fucking thing's disgusting. It's got a skull in it. The people are under the general impression that the parasite, you know, is meant to be the player from before, which is about as subtle as a brick. That is the person you were playing at the prologue who comes back to attach to you, and he doesn't look like he's actually separate, as if he was also caught by that creature. He looks like he was in fact a part of it, as if the creature is him, but we have no idea why he turned into that thing. Although there is this guy in Nika565 who does have an idea on it. He's linking it to the whole, like, ascension into a higher body that also exists in Scorn. And if you see your name in this video, then hello. So let's start off with the first theory. Mick Squiglington says, my theory is that Scorn's narrative precursors established a golden age of biomechanical design, but that someone either intentionally or accidentally unleashed something wholly organic on their industrial structure, something more akin to a cancer than a balanced organism. A short-lived war broke out, this civilization was almost wiped, and our characters, colleagues and brethren designed a way to co-opt the new ecosystem in order to enter stasis, maybe hoping to eventually awaken to a future where apoptosis and the lack of nutrients would have run their course and killed everything off. Our guy awakens alone an unspecified amount of time later, likely beset with amnesia, and he'll need a while to realise that he's likely the last of his kind. The growth has instead twisted his native species form into a grotesque parody, the former thing, either as a new animal ecology to contend with or oppose, or as grotesque living roadblocks the pod man from the gameplay segment we were shown, the one you could apparently either kill for his arms and hands or actually pull out of his pod and leave alive. I bet my ass that we meet more of those pod men for the puzzle segments, and that some tiny bits of lore suggest that they're all clones of the same being. Now, while they are all clones, this guy made this comment before the game actually came out, so a lot of things in this were disproven. He was right about there being some sort of war, though it being as devastating as to wipe out the civilization is, well, definitely not true. And also, the whole like idea, it says in the art book that he was like a newborn, and so he's definitely not someone who's been put into stasis. And so this theory is right in some points, but wrong in others. But this was made before the game came out, I believe. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this man's name, but he says, so originally the Scorn civilization was very much an industrial civilization that swore in a pleasure cult that functioned similar to the Hellraiser franchise's Hellraisers, and in their pursuit of pleasure went and became something else in paradise, like greedy CEO tropes, causing everything to snowball and get progressively worse and worse with each successive generation of Scorn guy McPod that gets it to the Kano temple but never gets to paradise or a ship, cause Scorn site was not letting Scorn guy McPod go up the final set of stairs. Also seems like Scorn people have a limited telepathic ability. Well, yes, they do have a bit of a telepathic ability, but the naming things are a bit strange, and I do feel like there's definitely some sort of pleasure cult going on, and I think he does hit on something that I was thinking. Maybe like the sort of disaster that befell the civilization wasn't sudden, but very gradual as to how it happened. This next fellow, Blue Lens 7, brings up an interesting theory that I've seen a few people say, where he talks about the failed pregnancy theory. Act 1 lets you pick between freeing the deformed humanoid with a saw, like a C-section, or killing it with a scoop, abortion. The huge long neck creature dies in order to progress, like a mother dying in childbirth. Several puzzles involving a guided a little dot sperm to a big dot an egg. The final place that is littered with copulation images where you must harvest the life essence of a several fetus creature to progress stem cell harvesting, and in the end the protagonist is held back from passing through an enormous birth canal by a parasitic twin. Now, what's meant by failed pregnancy theory, I'm not sure, but it's definitely not like necessarily pregnancy, but the overall idea of reproduction that is certainly coming up a lot in Scorn. Many of the like little transcendent bodies that the ones that you actually go into, pregnant in of themselves, even though despite having male figures. There is even an almost childlike innocence to many of the creatures in Scorn. Like, the mold men don't have much of an intelligence, and the Chuckers in themselves do somewhat remind me of fetuses. Concepts of birth, reproduction, littered throughout Scorn, because Scorn has, you know, a lot of like deep emotions to it, and reproduction is a very big part about being human. So on our next theory, Joachim, look, you people need to stop having unpronounceable names. Have like simple names, like Phil Flanagan. Anyway, there's actually another possibility that Scorn isn't set on an alien world, because it isn't set on any world at all, but rather inside someone's mind. This would explain the imagery, some of the weirder aspects of the world, and the weirder gateway at the end. It's a metaphorical in-universe inside someone's head, and the gateway at the end is the exit. If true, this would also imply that what actually happened in Scorn was not the people of the world ascending to a high plane of existence, but actually that their ascended paradise turned into a hell, and they all escaped back into the real world. Now, I don't think this is one of those it all happens in the head kind of game. I think they are trying to construct an actual interesting world here. Like, everything you see before you is supposed to be real. Although what would have been, because it's meant to be like mad, like, as I can understand it being like a bit of an allegory for madness, but what would have been interesting is if in the game they started blurring the lines between what you saw being real and what isn't real kind of thing. That would have been a bit interesting, though I'm not fully sure how you'd work that in. In our next theory, the Surrealist says, the theory I've created is that somewhere on the timeline of human history, humanity began to reject technology, similar to the Jihad in Dune, but what humans found is they could create technology for advanced genetic manipulation, so at some point they didn't even need modern tech to do this. They could use the organic tech they developed to produce more organic tech, and eventually after so long, Earth turned into what we see in Scorn. There must have been some kind of mass cultural shift to reject technology that isn't naturally sourced from flesh and bone. It looks like there may have also been influences from some greater cosmic force that helped the facility in the creation of this organic tech, as well as the elites of Earth at the time probably have enough control to do this. Man, the elites in the Earth, fucking Illuminati shit, they probably have enough control to do this right now. But that aside, I'm not sure if that's exactly what Scorn is going for. I feel thinking that far back is like a bit pointless. I feel like what Scorn's trying to do is it's more like Star Wars. You know what? There's like humans in a completely different galaxy, but there's no real explanation as to why there are humans in this distant galaxy a long, long time ago. It's just that they are supposed to be there. It's just, you know, it's accepted as a given. And I think that's what they're trying to do with Scorn, that this is just what reality is, and it's just accepted as a given. And the last theory that I want to discuss is by Ewan Smith, who says, headcanon, Moldman is travelling the land as a nomad, telling tales to other fellow Moldman and women of his near-death escape from the facility, living his life among the Mold people as a travelling group, somehow happy in this godforsaken world and helping others as they survive together. And Beam Giga Chad replies, we're still happy than lonely Polis people, by the way. Yeah, maybe that's what like Scorn's or DLC spin-off should be, it's Moldman's escape. Oh, mind you, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe this is how we can introduce him to the Mold Lolly. Here's my new pitch, right? It's just what he said of like Moldman walking out in the wilderness. You know, this is what the Scorn anime is going to be. It's going to be Scorn, the moldiest man, something like that, right? That's my pitch for the Scorn anime. Trust me, Ib Software, I'm not a financial advisor, I don't know what I'm talking about, but you should definitely take this idea up with Studio Trigger. Another thing I've been seeing around in the comments section is about why the game is called Scorn. It's Scorn directed at who? Well, I could tell you who the Scorn is directed at. The Scorn is directed at me, because I'm the guy who has to talk about this game's story and lore, and then these dickheads at Ib Software decide to make it the most vague shit and make my job virtually impossible. Basically, in all of this, I'm the one being scorned. But to talk about what I think the allegories that Scorn deals with, and there are many things like specifically that it deals with, and we could discuss them as we go along, but it seems to have a very nihilistic view on life. It's just a constant concept that everything in some form, way or another is suffering, and as you advance others fail, like how you kill the Crater Queen, my beautiful gamer GF, and when you either kill or abandon Moldman, there is this very interesting and reoccurring concept that for some people to win, others must fail. And it reminds me a lot of the Buddhist concept of samsara. Now, of course, Scorn has had religious connotations, not just with Christianity, as people have linked it to the Divine Comedy, but also with Buddhism, that Motian mechanical monstrosity that will cut Scorn guy open and sucks him off, is linked to, like, they describe it in a similar vein as Vishnu, which is a Hindu god. And so it reminds me a lot of samsara. Now what samsara is it's the Buddhist concept of the endless suffering of life, like the endless cycle. When you die in Buddhist idea, like Buddhist religion, you go to the hell realms and then you are tortured and punished for your sins and transgressions, which you are then reincarnated back on Earth, only to then, die and then go back to the hell realms until you eventually reach Nirvana. Now, this, of course, seems a lot like the sort of gate that you reach at the end. It's a form of Nirvana for our character. It's something that he is desperately trying to get to, but in the end finds himself falling just short of. Even when it comes to the enemies in the game, the majority of them you don't actually have to fight, and any violence or suffering is caused, well, really by you, the player. Like, when, let's say, even the way you have to fight the homunculi who's in the cyborg, well, he's only defending himself because you killed the one before him, right? You are the aggressor in this situation. There are very few situations, in fact, I don't think there are any situations or combat situations in which you're not the aggressor. When it comes to the Chuckyus, you are encroaching on their territory, you are invading their home. When it comes to the Moldmen, well, you just fucking kill him. You are the bad person who is creating the suffering, and it is something that your people did beforehand. Not only to the beings around them, but to even they themselves. And this is an interesting concept. This is the very root and idea of what samsara as a concept is. And so it's even though we perceive everything around us as bad or evil, or even as a tool just to be used, we get a concept that, well, we are kind of the bad guys causing this suffering. I said it during my playthrough of the game, especially during the boss fight, was that it feels like we're the bad guys, we're the person who's the not nice individual. Even the parasite, even though it was killing us, right, it still helped us in other ways. Like, the parasite in of itself was a creature that caused suffering, much like we were doing to others. It caused suffering to us while also helping us. And it was more a sign that you can't trust those things which may seem like they help. It's a very nihilistic look on the world, but in many ways truthful. It's one of those harsh reality type of ideas, but it's taken to a very horrific and extreme point. This links with the artist that I discussed with when talking about my ideas about Scorn's philosophy, that it was going to be a very depressing game. It was a game that had a very negative outlook on the very concept of what it means to be a human. Not even that necessarily humans are incapable of being good, it is more that it's more just a part of being a human that causes these things to happen. It's the very existence of life. I mean, if you look in nature, if you could extract humanity from the equation and just talk about nature, for one organism to succeed, another organism must fail. There are organisms that work in tandem with each other, but generally most living creatures will prey on each other. Like creatures eat plants, or animals will also eat other animals, or even plants will also eat animals. Which is, I think, the basis of what the Society of Polis is. It's a society that has just indulged itself not only in the pleasures of life, but in the suffering of it. It's like masked itself with all of these pleasures, but underlying it, underpinning that is the endless suffering that you face for the mere fact that you are alive. And this is what I believe the root of Scorn's philosophy to be, the concept of life is suffering. And of course how in the end it all comes to ruination. Now I do hope that they expand on this more, that they give it some sort of DLC, or they give it a director's cut like I was saying. That this is something that does need to be looked into more. It's just, it gives us too little. And that might be to its credit that after it came out, we were just constantly begging for more, we're begging that this is not enough. From a particular perspective, that's a very good thing. I might at them on Twitter, see what they have to say about the idea of a director's cut. But dear viewers, until then, I hope you enjoyed what may in fact be my last video about Scorn, unless the developers decide to continue it further. And so with that, I'm gonna have to say goodbye, and I'll catch you next time.